Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here today. We have a very special guest for a brief fireside chat today. Greg Anderson is the president of Allegiant Travel. And if you don't know Allegiant, it's has a very unique business model, even among ultra low-cost carriers. And maybe we can start, Greg, by talking about a little bit about your business model and how you're preparing for the future.
Sure, I appreciate it, John, and thanks everyone for joining. You know, at Allegiant, I'd like to describe us in one word, and that's we're different. And we focus 100% on the leisure customer. And we've really, over the years, been able to grow into something that I believe is not only very important to the U.S., but a necessary service to the transportation vehicle for consumers out there. And I say that is because we serve markets generally where others aren't. And again, we focus on leisure, and we have roughly 600 routes throughout the U.S. today, 600 different routes. Of those routes, 75% of them were the only nonstop service. And so without us there, 20 million customers that we serve per year, without us there, they're not going on vacation. They're not going to visit mom and dad on the weekend. So I think it's a very niche-y model. It's something that we built over the years, as we look to the future and strengthening our foundation, John, we see so much more demand for it. I mentioned 600 routes. As we look to the future, our network planning teams identified 1,400 incremental routes just in the U.S. alone. That 90% of them have no nonstop service. So it's just a really exciting story, in my view. It's something I know we do a little bit different, and we're continuing to evolve it. But what we've done is we've been industry leading in financial performance for the last 15 years, and we got a really great runway ahead of us.
Clearly, you do have a lot of runway ahead of you, and I think all of us appreciate the focus on underserved cities, the Syracuses, the Hagerstowns, and others that wouldn't have service at all or much otherwise. You have the surging demand that's led the leisure part of the demand has led the airline recovery in many ways. What kind of strategies and operational work have you done to adapt to that growth? And what role do you think that leisure travel in general is playing in the recovery of the industry?
I'll hit the first part of that question, and that's, you know, what we want to do at Allegiant is we want to continue to reshape the leisure travel in the U.S. And we do that, in my opinion, by expertly matching capacity with demand. No one does it, in my view, again, quite like we do. And I say that and it's because for us, there's 3 peak months or periods of the year where there's a lot of demand for leisure. March, spring break, you have summer, and you have the holidays. And so those are times where we peak up or we flex up our model and we kind of put the pedal to the metal, so to speak. But outside of that, you have shoulder or off-peak periods. By way of example, September, this is an off-peak leisure period, right? So we have half the capacity out there than we did 2 months ago during July. Half of the capacity, we cut it in half. And then if you want to take it one step further, a Tuesday in September, there's no demand. So if you want to see our fleet, if you want to go and just view our fleet, just go to any one of our bases. All our aircraft are parked today. So it's just, again, it's trying to set up a model that matches capacity with demand. I think our network's shaped to do it like no other. But the most important thing we can do, and we've been learning this more and more and becoming better at it, in my view, is running a good operations. Everything begins and ends with operations, and we're trying to step our game up in that regard. It can be very expensive to run a bad operation, and we learned that the hard way last year. So we've really brought together our planning and operational groups, sat our COO and our Chief Revenue Officer literally next to each other and said, you're both held accountable to the performance. And wow, what a difference a year has made for us. The first half of this year, not only have we led the industry U.S. financially in op margin, but also controllable completion, which is our true north operating metric. So really proud of the things we're doing and focused on that leisure space. But the second part of your question, now, we love the leisure customer. We view that a very important kind of resurgence of post-pandemic. You know, it's been first to rebound. And I think if any type of environment that leisure customer, at least our experience has been more sticky, where like if in a recessionary environment, there's a price point of which you can stimulate that demand. We did it during the pandemic. We did it during the financial crisis in 08 and 09. And if we experience that coming up, we'll do it again. So we do think the leisure focus is just key. And that's why we're so attuned to it.
It's clearly an important part of the industry and the economy in general. And Greg, one of the consistent themes that people have heard at the summit here is the FAA reauthorization. the importance of the consistency and predictability of an FAA reauthorization and for every segment of the industry. I'm curious about what might be some of the particular aspects of reauthorization that are most important for Allegiant and why.
I think for us, I probably characterize it as twofold, and I caught a glimpse of Peter and Robin talking about the ATC or the traffic controllers, and that's super important and also to us, but I won't keep hitting on that theme. But the other component of that is pilot scarcity. And this is an industry where, it's a terrific profession to be a pilot, but from our perspective, it could be kind of a high barrier of entry. It's expensive to become a pilot, and it takes a lot of time to build up to 1,500 hours. So something that we really like in the reauthorization bill is the Thune and Cinema Amendment, which we think allows for this creative mechanism to kind of bring the airlines in a little bit earlier to help train, to help kind of work a closed loop system with pilots to provide better technology, sims, things like that, to where I think it's better quality, better, safer, and so we really are excited about potential there and support that on the FAA reauthorization bill.
And presumably that fits well with the growth plans that you might have at Allegiant, but the larger industry plans for the future, and the front end of the pipeline clearly is an ongoing issue.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, we've been able to kind of mitigate that. Something we do a little bit different than most carriers is our network is out and back. So I would think about Allegiant, we have 24 unique bases, and a base is like an airline within an airline. Everything's out and back, out and back. A base, we have our aircraft base there. You have domiciled team members, crew members. And so the reason I explain that is because our crew members, the number 2 reason they love Allegiant is that out and back or quality of life, because they're home in their beds every night. They're at their children's sporting events, things like that. It's something that we're able to offer versus most of the others in the industry. You're on the road for several days. But yeah, I think to the growth plans and everything we want to do, that's one of the most important things we could do is to make sure that Allegiant is a destination airline for all of our team members, including pilots. We have ambitious growth plans. Over the next 5 years, we want to be 200 airplanes. Right now, we're about 125 aircraft, all A320 series, but 200 in 5 years, 300 in 10 years, and we can kind of manage everything and have all the infrastructure in place, but it's not going to matter if we don't have the team members and particularly the pilots there to help us get there.
In our remaining time here, maybe we can take a peek into the future a little bit and what you see as growth plans for Allegiant and for the leisure air travel industry in general. Some of the originating markets and certainly some of the destinations that might be high on your list.
Sorry about that. Well, one thing I mentioned earlier is domestic, like the low-hanging fruit for us domestically would be those 1,400 routes. So I think if you look at our network, we're not geographically tied to any one region, so we kind of continue to connect the dots in that area. But I think for us, an interesting opportunity is the ability to expand internationally and down south into Mexico. And so what we've been working on is what's antitrust immunity, or basically a deeper relationship than a code share, with a Mexican carrier called Viva Aerobus. And so what that means is for all the transporter flying between the US and Mexico, we want to partner with Viva Aerobus. And we think together we could become really stronger as we work together. Viva has infrastructure there. We have infrastructure in the US. We have 17, 18 million and growing US customers that tell us, and all those bases that I talked about, where 75% of them, there's no other nonstop service, they want to go to Puerto Vallarta, Cancun, Cabo, and they want to work with Allegiant to get there. And so we're really excited about that, and we think coming together with Viva in this antitrust immunity partnership, that we could provide that service. There's 250 routes today that have generally nonstop service that we could over time build into. And not only do you do that, what a benefit it's going to be for those customers, because you're going to cut fares in half by 50%, whereas today they'd have to connect into other larger airports. So that's one element. There's other elements of growth too, but I think it's pretty exciting if we can get that up and running. We're ready in the areas that we can control, but where we're at today is our application is with the DOT, and so we're waiting on approval in that regard.
Well, I have to thank you for that brief survey of what Allegiant's doing and a different model for an ultra-low-cost carrier that has obviously been very successful. We wish you success in the future and looking forward to some of those 1,400 additional markets.
Thank you, John, and thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.